以下為個人意見節目，內容提及嘅所有政綱及言論均以嘉賓原話為準，敬請留意。
市選論英雄 Municipal Election Talks 節目主持 Samuel Chang。
各位好，歡迎又再一次嚟到收聽我哋呢一個市選論英雄呢一個節目。我係節目主持人 Samuel 鄭和安。今日呢，我哋好歡喜呢，就喺我哋嘅錄音室裏面呢，就有萬錦市第8區嘅一個候選人。佢呢嘅英文名係 Peter Deboran。咁同阿 Peter 一齊嚟嘅呢，仲有佢一個義工。咁呢個義工呢，佢就一齊嚟到我哋個錄音室。佢就係Sami Karimi。咁我哋今日好歡迎Peter 同 Sami。Welcome Peter and Sami to come to our radio station and spend the time to take the interview. And on behalf of the stations, I welcome you both.
Ni hao, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, Samuel. Thank you very much for inviting us.
我呢首先呢就會問一問呢，就叫Peter 呢就介紹下佢自己，同埋呢亦都會問一問叫佢講講呢有關而家佢嗰個選區係邊一個選區，咁等大家呢都可以清楚到知道呢佢自己本人係點樣嘅。嗱Peter，when we start normally, the first statement I want to tell our audience is that the election is coming up, and it's going to be on October the 27th. And I felt it is my duty and obligations to tell our audience that they should take that as a responsibility to go out to vote.
I agree completely. I want to share with them that this is a country that we've come to for the freedom, not only for health care and good housing and quality food, but it's also the freedom to educate ourselves in the way we wish to find careers that make us happy and content, to be in homes that allow us solitude and safety, but also the comfort of our loved ones. So voting is one of the key factors that allow this democracy to thrive, and I invite them all to participate.
嗱，剛才呢，我就未叫佢介紹佢自己之前呢，我就講咗我話，通常呢一般呢喺我呢個節目呢，喺呢個市選論英雄呢，我都會同收音機裏面嘅聽眾講呢，就話我哋10月27號呢市選嘅時候呢，我哋一定要盡我哋嘅責任同義務呢出去投票，無論投標一個票都好。咁呢Peter 呢亦都呢就好同意，佢話呢我哋居住喺呢個自由民主同埋咁開放嘅社會裏面呢，咁我哋投票呢係我哋一個非常重要嘅環節之一。Peter, can you share with our listeners who you are and give us a little bit about your background and where you're coming from?
With pleasure. I've been a teacher for over 20 years, a former policy advisor to the Ontario government, a former community development worker with both UNICEF and other non-governmental organizations.
Peter 咧，佢就話咧，我正話就問佢可以介紹下自己，咁咧佢就話咧佢係教師，做咗20年教師，咁佢亦都咧就做過呢個策略嘅顧問。同埋咧，亦都喺呢個UNICEF 嗰度咧係做過工作嘅。You may continue, Peter.
I am currently a vice principal with the largest public school board in Canada, and in one of the toughest, most interesting areas to work in, the south end of Scarborough, where I look after the needs of over 750 students and their families.
咁佢而家咧，佢係喺呢個一個好有挑戰性嘅區域裏面咧，做一間學校裏面咧做副校長。咁咧就喺呢個士嘉堡嘅南邊，咁亦都有750個學生。咁所以咧佢工作咧係非常繁忙。So I guess you're very busy, during your normal day.
It is a day that does not end for me, because every single day you're dealing with a myriad of concerns, parents walking into you, community organizations, parent councils, children and their concerns, and dealing with teachers and the operations of the building and the facilities.
我就話佢做副校長，肯定日常工作係非常忙噶啦。咁佢就話根本就可以講冇停，又要應付學生，又要管理學校嘅運作，又要同呢個先生大家有呢個溝通。喺呢度咁多方面嚟講呢，實際上對佢嚟講呢，已經係一個非常繁重嘅工作嚟嘅。So Peter, now having heard what you said, it is really interesting for me to ask you these questions. You've got a good job, and you are the vice principal, and apparently you speak a couple of words of Cantonese too.
I grew up in Chinatown, downtown. My best friends are Chinese, but they can't really speak Cantonese or Mandarin.
Well, they may speak Hakka or some other dialects as well.
Yes.
Okay. 正話我同佢講，我話你有份非常重要繁忙嘅工作啊，咁我就想問佢點解又會諗下走出嚟參選呢？咁我亦都同佢講笑，我話你好似都識講幾句廣東話喎，咁原來咧佢喺呢個 downtown 呢個唐人街咧 Chinatown 咧長大嘅，咁佢話不過嗰度啲人咧又唔講廣東話，又唔講普通話。有可能係講客家話都未定啊咁。Peter, can you share with our listeners what's the motive or the motivations behind you coming out and wanted to put your heads into running as a candidate for Ward 8?
Samuel, I'm just as shocked as everyone else is. I never thought I'd be a politician. But over the last 3 or 4 years, I've become increasingly frustrated the way our city is run. I have, 3 children. I've been living here for over 10 years. My wife's family has been here for over 35 years. And I've seen enormous changes just within the last 5 years that I think are distressing and disadvantageous to the residents of our city.
我剛才就問佢，我話實際上有啲咩嘢令到佢會我用英文講話點解將你頂帽擺落去嗰度一齊去參選呢？廣東話我哋就話點解會跳入去呢個參選嘅行列呢？咁佢就話呢，佢自己都係有啲詫異，有啲驚奇。不過呢，佢就自己有3個細路，結婚10年。咁啊呢，佢過去呢，佢發覺到呢，佢個市裏面呢，有好多嘢呢，佢覺得呢，佢係可以幫同埋可以做得更好嘅。咁喺呢一方面呢，由於咁樣呢，咁佢就我諗呢就係決定咁嚟參選，睇下佢可唔可以做到啲咩嘢。Now, having said that, Peter, can you share with our listeners what Ward 8 and the boundaries of Ward 8 is, and whether Ward 8 is has a new boundaries? Because I understand in Markham City, they have made some changes to the various wards. So
Correct.
Is Ward 8 the same as before?
It's not the same. It is larger. In simple terms, it's gone from approximately, let's say, 42 or 43,000 to almost 50,000 residents. The whole of Markham has been redrawn to allow for future growth. And let me add right now that we are expecting over 1 million more people to Markham and the surrounding environments over the next 10 years, which is one of the reasons why I'm running.
OK， 我正話咧就問佢，我話第8選區咧就喺邊度？佢就未詳細答咧，即係我會問佢嗰個新嗰個範圍，因為咧萬錦市咧就有重新咧劃過啲選區嘅。咁重新劃個選區咧有好多原因嘅。咁其中一個原因咧就係咧佢可以令到嗰個分佈咧更加好，個代表性又會好啲。咁喺第8選區咧，實際上咧就佢哋重新劃過就大咗嘅。咁咧就以前就有42,000個居民，而家咧就有5萬個。咁當然咧，成個萬錦市咧，佢哋預計將來咧會有多100萬嘅人口。Peter, can you tell us the boundaries of Ward 8 now?
Sure.
I do have a map in front of me, but if you can just
Sure.
give us the street names and the north, south, east, and west.
The easternmost corner would be McCowan.
Okay.
Southernmost is Steeles. Part of the northernmost is 407. But then at Warden, It goes all the way up to Highway 7 on the south side and then moves across to Bayview. Then it comes down at approximately 145-degree angle going southwards to the 404, which is near Woodbine. And that whole area out to Bayview is a brand new area for the ward with approximately another 6,000 residents.
嗱，我剛才問佢咧，而家第8選區咧就個區域嘅個範圍就咁嘅。嗱，東邊咧係由 McCowan 開始，咁咧就南邊咧就喺 Steeles Avenue 就開始嗰度，呢個咧係東同南。咁咧喺 McCowan 咧就向北咧就係去到407，咁喺407咧一路直過咧就向西咧就去到呢個 Warden， 咁喺 Warden 咧就上到去咧就 Highway 7， 咁喺 Highway 7咧就一路打橫咧就向西咧就去到呢個Bayview 咧，咁喺 Bayview 咧就跟住咧就407咧就一路彎翻落嚟咧就cut 翻404。咁咧呢一個咧喺 Bayview 嗰度嗰個咧就係屬於係新劃出嚟嘅，嗰度咧大概咧亦都有6000居民。咁所以咧，如果你係住喺呢一個區嘅時候咧，你哋就要有可能你係新嘅，就係屬於第8選區。咁如果你不嬲都喺嗰度中間嘅咧，就冇乜更改噶啦。So I've make it clear that if they live particularly in the Bayview and south of the 407 area, south of Highway 7 area, and these would be the new areas that are redrawn into Ward 8, right?
I'm going, yes.
Okay, good. Okay. So I guess our listeners should have a good understanding whether they are in the ward or they are not. But even if they are not, and I'm sure that they will be interested to know about all our candidates who is really, acting on their behalf, whether they be north, south, east, or west in the Markham area.
Yes, Samuel, and in fact, the issues that I want to talk about, that I'm going to talk about, will affect everyone in Markham. So they're common to every candidate, I believe.
OK， 嗱，我剛才同佢講咧，嗱，如果你係佢選區咧，當然咧你會好有興趣聽下 Peter 佢講有關佢嘅意念各方面嘅嘢。但係如果你唔係嘅時候咧，我相信咧作為喺萬錦市嘅居民咧，甚至喺多倫多市嘅居民咧，我哋都係好想知道下出嚟競選嘅人，佢甚至到將來有可能佢係做我哋嘅市議員，咁佢做我哋市議員之後。咁有咩嘢可以做得到幫得到我哋嘅咧？咁咧我跟住咧我就會叫佢咧就講一講佢個競選嘅綱要睇下呢個選區裏面或者整個萬錦市裏面咧有啲咩嘢係我哋一般嘅居民咧係關注嘅。I'm sure many of our listeners who live in the Markham area they have their own concern in mind, okay? And I'm sure you look at it at a bigger picture, not just perhaps from the Ward 8 perspective, but perhaps from an overall the City of Markham perspective. Now, Peter, can you share with our listeners, I hate to use the word platform, but
of course,
what is it that you think you can do and that may be of interest to our, the residents, or even maybe of interest to people outside of Markham City, and sure. Something that they can learn from you?
The job of a city councillor at the ward level is tied to everyday living. This is about the sewage underneath the houses. This is about the electricity. It's about the roads, garbage pickup, snow removal. But it's also about police, fire, ambulances, and most importantly about the future growth of our region. We cannot just think of Markham in terms of the next 5 years, but we must think in terms of the next 25 and 50 years.
剛才咧Peter 咧就講咧就從一個選區嘅市議員嘅立場嚟講咧，對每一個居民咧係日常咧生活嘅每一個部分，從我哋去水道，從我哋政府提供嘅服務呢個鏟雪各方面，甚至到警察治安各方面嘅嘢咧，係佢哋都會負責到嘅。咁當然咧喺佢嚟講咧，就唔係淨係呢啲嘢咁簡單。咁喺佢嚟講咧，佢亦都想睇到咧係呢個未來呢5年咧嘅發展係點樣樣嘅。You may continue, Peter.
These are the services that make our city livable. And all our taxes are tied to that, our property taxes. One of the main reasons I finally decided to do this, which is to run, was that I noticed over the last 2 or 3 years that our services are not keeping up with the fast-paced growth of the city.
嗱，佢剛才講咧，正話提出嗰啲咁嘅服務啊，從呢個水啊、電啊、呢個警察啊各方面嘅服務咧，不但止咁咧，咁但係咧佢發覺到咧，佢呢啲咁嘅服務咧，係亦都直接咧同我哋嘅物業稅咧係掛上，因為你物業稅就係俾以上呢啲咁嘅服務。咁佢睇到咧過去嗰幾年咧，即係我哋喺呢個第8選區咧裏面，或者整個萬錦市裏面咧，嗰個服務嘅要求咧就越嚟越多，亦都有可能係追唔上。咁喺呢方面咧，佢係非常關注嘅。
As an example of this, we have many of our roads or many of our streets have beautiful large trees that gave us shade in the summer and blocked the wind in the winter. But over the last 3 or 4 years, I kept calling the city and the councillor saying, please come and trim the trees because that's your job. I'm not allowed to trim it. They never came for 3 years in a row. And in the 4th year, the ice storm hit. And my beautiful tree was split in half, and every house on my lane, right across Markham, beautiful trees destroyed. That cost the city $17 million because they did not do their annual servicing of the trees.
佢舉一個非常有興趣嘅例子，佢就話呢，佢過去嗰幾年呢，佢都曾經呢就向呢個市局嗰度呢就通知，佢就話呢，我哋街道呢有啲大樹呢就夏天遮陽光，冬天呢大風嘅時候亦都可以擋到風。不過呢，佢亦都有通知呢個市呢，就要佢嚟，喂，你要收一收啦，因為嗰啲樹呢就唔係喺即係一般我哋自己私人住宅裏面嗰啲，係喺私人住宅外面嗰啲，即係政府負責嘅。3年呢都冇嚟呢個去維修，去剪嗰啲咁嘅樹嚇，令到啲樹或者可以細棵啲，生得好啲咁。嗱，舊年大雪嚇，落冰雨，所以呢，佢話佢嗰條街呢，大部分嗰啲雪呢都裂開兩橛。咁裂開兩橛都唔緊要啊！裂開兩橛嘅時候呢，卒之呢個市政府呢要使咗1700萬呢，係去呢個去搞掂嗰啲咁嘅樹啊、鋸啊嗰啲咁嘅服務。咁你變咗呢方面呢，佢就覺得非常關注。Yeah, I kind of concur with you, and the tree it's certainly beautiful, but maintenance is very important too.
Now, that does not include the cost of replacing those trees, but more to the point, the city is committed to increasing our density by 50% over the next few years. That means as more and more major developments occur, and these developers and the politicians are not willing to change the infrastructure underneath our roads, the more disasters we have, and we will continue to have those in the future as we use up our greenhouse gases, that means we will have the kinds of flooding that we had last year in July. It means that we will have the kinds of ice storms that we had, and our city planners did not anticipate that, and that worries me. I do not believe they're thinking in terms of emergency management. They're not thinking in terms of just natural growth for the city.
佢當然咧，佢正話講咧，佢頭先講過1700萬咧，都未計咧呢個係即係呢個種新樹。咁除咗咁之外咧，未來嗰幾年咧，呢個有好多嘅物業啊，同埋咧呢個嘅發展咧，就會令到咧就更加咧多啲呢方面嘅需求。嗱，如果嗰個市嘅服務喺呢方面做得唔夠好嘅話咧，就會有重蹈覆轍，好似舊年水浸或者我哋啱啱剛過去嘅呢個雪暴一樣。咁咧呢啲咧係佢唔想見到嘅。Now you actually touch on the points that I think many of our residents, still remember vividly what happened, the flooding and the snowstorm and all of those things,
These are some of the things that propelled me to run. My job as a vice principal basically is to anticipate the future. My job is to think not only of the education of every single individual child, but their safety as well, their learning needs. I have to think of the teachers and what do they need to be able to help these children learn. I have to think of the parents. because you cannot have a child willing to learn unless you look at the whole family and the whole community. So we deal with interpreters, psychologists, we deal with settlement issues, we deal with unemployment, because I have to do all of that to ensure that these children have a proper future in our system. This is very similar to what our counselors should be doing for the city, and yet they have not. I believe it's just because they do not have the experience or the training and have never anticipated these kinds of things.
佢自己咧就講，佢話作為一個副校長咧，佢唔係淨係睇住今日啲學生係點樣嘅，佢睇嘅咧係睇到比較遠啲嘅將來，佢係要喺唔同嘅方面，無論喺心理嘅方面，喺學習嘅方面，同埋咧呢個應付啊、教師啊喺各方面咧，佢都要有一個好好嘅準備。咁呢一個咧。對佢嚟講咧，係俾咗佢一個好好嘅經驗。咁佢覺得咧，呢個市政府實際上嚟講咧，有可能咧係冇呢一方面嗰個背景，所以咧呢個係其中一個原因咧。佢覺得咧，佢係有咁嘅資歷同埋有咁嘅背景咧，係亦都咧令到佢肯出嚟咧去參選，作為第8區嘅呢個候選人嘅。Now, we've heard a lot about some of the things that you talk about. Peter, can you tell our listener? Now, I mentioned your name, Peter Deboran.
Yes, Peter Deboran, yes.
Spell us P-E-T-E-R.
Peter, right?
D-E-B-O-R-A-N.
Hiya, yeah.
Okay, now that's good because at the end of the day, when we go out to vote, we want to know the name of the person that we're voting for. Now, what other channels do we have from a listener from the resident perspective if they want to find out more about you? Do you have a website? Is there contact information that they might be able to call you? Is that something you can give it out to our listeners?
Absolutely. Samuel, I want our listeners as Canadians to judge me on my character and my history of community service and my ability to serve their interests, which means I want people to genuinely examine who I am. My website is simple, peterdeboran.ca. I have a Twitter and Facebook account and phone number, and all of that is linked to the website, which includes my biography both in English and Chinese, and as well my resume, plus several of my platforms for them to look at.
Okay, Peter 咧佢就講咧，佢話佢好希望咧，即係我哋作為呢個選民呢，係用一個好客觀嘅眼光去審查下佢個人，佢嗰個品格同埋佢嘅經驗。咁呢，佢呢亦都有一個網站呢，就好清晰呢，就有中英文呢，係可以介紹佢自己嘅。咁佢好希望呢，即係大家有機會嘅時候呢，係能夠去上到個網站。佢上到網站呢，佢亦都有其他嘅社交嘅方式咧，可以同佢聯絡到嘅，好似Facebook Twitter 啊，咁都可以有，亦都有佢聯絡電話喺處嘅。咁佢個網站咧就好簡單，就係佢個名係 peterdeboran.ca peterdeboran.ca。咁如果大家咧喺佢選區想知道多啲有關阿 Peter 嘅嘢咧，我上過佢網站都有好多嘢，咁你可以上去睇下，咁去自己做一個評估，睇下佢係咪一個可以代表你喺市府做嘢嘅工作嘅人。I've given our listeners the details, and certainly I urge them to go to the website to take a look and make their own assessment and judgment. And Peter, time's running out very quickly.
Okay, so let me just move on to one more thing that I feel is very important for our listeners. Back to what you said earlier, which is because we have all this development, because we put $2,000 or $3,000 people, I mean 2,000 or 3,000 people in these condos, they own 1,000 cars. We have traffic gridlock. Yet we do not have an adequate public transportation system. We do not have a proper traffic demand management system to control the flow of traffic. Simply widening roads, we cannot do that anymore because we have buildings there. This is, to me, spells a lack of thinking about complex problems, and this is my training.
OK， 嗱佢有一樣嘢佢一定要講嘅咧，佢就話咧，因為咧佢預計咧就會有2,000-3,000個單位嘅大廈咧，式嘅公寓咧就會起。 咁當然啦，如果有2-3千個單位呢，就起碼呢多1000幾百架車。咁呢就多1000幾百架車呢，就交通當然係一個問題。咁啊同埋呢，佢覺得呢個市府呢係需要佢呢啲咁嘅人呢，係去睇睇個軟件嗰方面，喺公共交通嗰方面有咩嘢可以做得更好嘅呢？因為呢個呢，如果唔係呢，日後呢就變咗形成呢交通又有問題，居住大家亦都有問題。咁呢，所以喺呢方面呢，佢亦都要講出嚟。呢一個係一個比較複雜嘅問題，又唔係咁簡單可以話即刻可以解決到嘅，亦都需要比較長遠啲咁去做嘅。Now, Peter, as I said earlier, time is running out so quickly. When we talk, we don't know how time flies.
Right.
Now, before we finished, I want to ask you to tell our listeners, come October the 27th, why should they go out and vote and put a cross against your name, Peter Deboran?
My history of community support shows that I am a very good listener and a very good communicator.
咁我剛才問佢，我話你我哋10月27號出去選嘅時候，點解我哋要選佢呢？咁佢話呢，佢嗰個記錄啊，佢自己嘅記錄呢係非常好，同埋呢佢係一個好好嘅聆聽者。
To give a quick example of what I've done locally, I'm currently on the board of directors of the RBC Markham Milliken Children's Festival, perhaps the largest children's festival in Ontario. Free this Saturday. Please come and join us.
佢而家呢係領導緊呢個 RBC 一個兒童嘅節目嘅，咁呢逢禮拜六、禮拜日呢，佢都有做嘅。咁歡迎大家呢可以出去參與。呢個只不過係佢其中一樣嘢，佢做義工提供嘅服務嘅。
Near to my heart is education, of course.
咁當然啦，當然教育對佢嚟講係非常重要啦。佢自己係一個副校長。
Besides being a vice principal on the large board, I am an advisor to STEMCAN, which is an agency devoted to helping children who are marginalized, who are disadvantaged, to learn more about science, technology, math, and engineering for free.
咁佢除咗做校長之外呢，佢亦都係一個顧問呢。就有一個機構叫 STEMCAN 咧，就係咧係俾嗰啲細路咧能夠可以幫到佢咧喺呢個科研啊各方面嘅。咁呢個咧亦都係完全係一個免費嘅提供嘅服務俾啲有需要嘅小朋友嘅。
And finally, as is shown on my website, I am the former event co-chair for Asian Heritage Month for both the public and Catholic school boards in the GTA, including the 10th anniversary celebrations. So I've done a lot of work for all communities.
咁當然咧，除咗咁之外咧，佢亦都係喺其他嘅服務上面咧，係有做咗好多嘅嘢嘅。咁亦都好難樣樣都提供晒俾所有。Now, Peter, time is up. On behalf of the radio stations, I want to thank you for coming in, and Zalmi as well. And you've been a very kind listener, and I wish you luck. And I hope our listener will go out there on October the 27th and put in their vote, and whoever they vote for. But do spend some time and look at the right candidate for your right community. 我咧就剛才咧就多謝阿 Peter 今日嚟到我哋個電台，咁好似以往一樣，希望大家10月27號出去投票。咁Peter, last words?
I just want to invite people again to choose the candidate that actually represents them. Gone are the days when we choose somebody just because of what they look like or the language they speak. This is Canada. We need to choose people who will best represent us in the new urban reality of this country.
最後咧 ，Peter 就希望咧大家能夠咧真真正正去揀一個人，可以代表佢，唔係揀一個人你睇佢個樣啱，或者佢講嘅言語啱聽嘅。咁喺呢一方面咧，佢就希望大家能夠作一個好嘅抉擇，因為我哋喺加拿大係多元文化。喺呢一方面呢，我哋亦都要比較開明，無論個族裔係邊一個，咁大家都係喺呢方面呢可以作出一個決定嘅。
Amgoisai, everyone, and thank you very much for having me, Samuel.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Sammy. OK.
以上內容純屬個人言論， 所提及嘅政綱均以嘉賓原話為準，並不代表本台立場，敬請留意。本台立場，敬請留意。本台立場，敬請留意。本台立場，敬請留意。